Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. We are joined by Michael Manikas. Michael is the General Manager of DLG Shape. DLG Shape is a majority Aboriginal-owned business that provides construction fit-out and refurbishment services across Australia for both government and private sector clients. It was really good to speak to Michael. Michael is a qualified quantity surveyor. He's also the former CEO of the Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyors. Really interesting conversation. Michael tells us about his experience in working for both tier one contractors as well as tier one consultancies, and essentially what his vision is in engaging more Aboriginal, Indigenous people to work within the construction sector. It's really good to sit down with Michael, a really humble, down-to-earth individual that has a real love for the construction industry and a real drive for engaging more of the Indigenous people in construction. And to be honest, I learned quite a bit from Michael and some of the key factors in his vision. And I believe one of the main things is that there's so few Aboriginal quantity surveyors in Australia, which I was absolutely flabbergasted. And one of the things that I got from Michael is that we really, really need to come together as an industry to provide more opportunities for the Aboriginal community and not just be a box ticking exercise. And it was just great to see someone who had so much humility and so much of a burning desire to go out there to various different communities throughout all of Australia, throughout the Northern Territory and all over, and really speak to the young people and talk about how construction can really change a life and change a family's life. So it was a super inspirational conversation, and it was really good to have Michael on the show. And I hope you take a bit from the podcast. So without further ado, this is Michael Manikas. The first question that we ask all our guests on the show, Michael, is how do you measure success?
So I probably measure success in many different ways, especially in where I am in my career now. I've got a heavy focus on making an impact. Mm-hmm. So measuring success for a client may be in terms of a financial success or getting something done on time and on budget. But I like to measure it in what the external outcomes are for a project as well.
Mm-hmm. And when you say external outcomes, are you talking about how the end user uses the project that you complete?
Yeah, it is. So an example that I could use in terms of a project is we did a project down in Adelaide for South Australian housing, which is called Tikaturka. So that was an Indigenous accommodation for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students to come into Adelaide and get the opportunity to go to uni and have a culturally sensitive place of accommodation to stay at. Mm-hmm. So I measure success in that in many ways. So one was the project was over budget. We had to value manage that down. We got the project come in under budget. We delivered the project in time. The outcome for the client was great. They got an amazing looking space that came in within their budget. But then the outcomes for that for the Aboriginal community is just amazing in that it gives the opportunity for kids to come into university, which is one of my big focuses. I'm one of two Aboriginal quantity surveyors in the country. I think I'm the only Aboriginal quantity surveyor that's a fellow of the RICS and the AIQS in the world.
In the world?
Yeah, and the number of students at university that are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander doing architecture and property is 255 out of 1.5 million people. Yeah, so you break that down per year of study per state and territory, it gets down to only less than a handful per state and territory per year. So extremely low numbers. So yeah, success would for me is to get that successful outcome for the client in terms of the project, but also the successful outcome to the extended community that may be affected by that project.
No, I love that. And I think it's super important having something that connects you to the community and your heritage and your culture. It's something that I've become a little bit more concerned about. Obviously, I'm an immigrant to Australia. I come across so many different people along the way working in recruitment, and I see a lot of different people who come to Australia, and I've sort of tried to go out there and try to help them as well, just to get recognized. And I think that gives me a bit of purpose about what I'm trying to do. And this is also the reason why I'm doing the podcast as well, is to share stories and talk about these sorts of things, because it's important that we do talk about them, and we want to change the industry for the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really keen to go back and talk about your sort of start of your career and getting into quantity surveying. What was the reason you wanted to be a quantity surveyor, Michael?
Originally wanted to be an aeronautical engineer.
Oh yeah.
But I was at school. So I grew up in the hospitality industry. So Dad had a pub that I grew up in, and so I had a lot of time in that. Dad did a bit of property development with some friends as he was growing up, and I did some labouring, cleaning bricks and moving reinforcement around and doing all that sort of stuff on some sites for him. So that gave me a taste into the building side. But I had a passion for flying, and I wanted to get involved in aeronautical engineering, but not many job opportunities in Australia. I had a friend who did it. He really struggled. He's now a mechanical engineer working on buildings. So I thought I'll try and go down a path that I think is a bit safer in terms of career options. Went down the path of building, and when I got to uni, there was a course called Construction Economics that didn't mention quantity surveying. I had no idea what quantity surveying was, and enrolled in the course, got in. Within a week, I had a cadetship at WT Partnership, and I was measuring. So the rest is history.
Yeah, throwing straight into the frying pan from the very start. Where did you grow up? What part of Australia did you grow up, Michael?
So I grew up in Campsie in the inner west part of Sydney. Mm-hmm. My dad's Greek heritage, so he came to Australia when he was 15 with absolutely nothing. Moved to Dubbo when he got to Australia, and then he got here when he was 15, and in his late teens he moved to Sydney. That's where I met my mother. My mother's of Aboriginal heritage, and she moved down from the country in her late teens as well, and they ended up working together and started a relationship. And yeah, they worked together in milk bars, and from milk bars they progressed to a hotel.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And so was there anyone in your sort of greater family that worked in the construction industry that that give you that mentorship, or you looked up to and thought, that's a person I can aspire to be like?
So Dad's cousins that he came to Australia with from Greece, when they moved to Sydney, they established an aluminium window business, mm-hmm. which is called Michael Aluminium Windows. And they now, over the years, they've provided windows for most of the high-rise buildings in the capital cities. They provide windows for Meriton Apartments and Mirvac and Lendlease and all those type of developers that you'd know.
Yep.
So they were probably family member that I understood had done quite well from getting into the construction industry. And then, like I said, Dad did some more small sort of residential developments that got me a taste for it, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
Awesome.
And growing up in the hotel industry, it became, so we had the hotel for 30 years, and in the first 25 years, we really didn't have much trouble at all. But in the last 5 years, I think it's like any cash business, it got very dangerous, and we'd been held up so many times in the hotel.
Yeah.
And I had my sister working in there, several cousins. It was a real family business in there. We had one cousin got a shotgun put down his mouth, and thank God they didn't pull the trigger, but they emptied the safe out on us. And we've had others bashed up in the bottle shop, and they've stolen cash registers. So it was just an extremely dangerous business to be in, especially with the money that was being turned over in the poker machine. So Dad felt it was time to retire out of that for our family safety.
Yeah, fair enough. What was your first memory of construction? Obviously, starting with WT Partnership, did you have any first memories of what it was like in those first couple of years?
Yeah, it was very different then to what it is now. I remember when we started there, we had dial phones. Um, we had BuildSoft, but it was the old DOS version of BuildSoft on the green computer screens. I think we had 7 computers to 10 employees back then.
Oh yeah.
So I used to have to wait until one of the older cadets would go out for a site visit for me to be able to jump on and measure some. Yeah, so it was a very different place back then, but an amazing, like I've recommended to numerous students that I've met to get in there and do a cadetship because it just made university so much easier, actually learning so much we did on the job.
Yeah.
And WT was a great starting point for me because the projects that I was exposed to as a 20-year-old was just incredible, working on sort of $100 or $200 million residential developments and hospitals and all sorts of stuff. It was incredible.
And was it like an exciting time, learning all this, all these different techniques within construction and meeting all these new people?
Really interesting time. Got some great stories. Like there was one time where I was negotiating a variation with a builder on a large residential project. I think I was like second year cadet at uni, and it was about $1 million reinforcement variation. And the end of the meeting was where I'd done a full remeasure of the reinforcement, and there was no way they were entitled to that sort of money. It ended with the state manager for the builder saying, "I know where you live."
Oh my goodness! Well,
I don't think would happen these days either.
That's crazy. well, yeah, okay. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, that's crazy times. Those first, 4 or 5 years in your career, was there anything that you struggled with? Because it's always questions that I'm getting from graduates to ask others within the industry. Was there anything that you felt that was a little bit harder getting to terms with or getting used to?
Look, the only thing I sort of struggled with at the start was it was very much a UK-focused profession still back then.
Yep.
And very dominant. Management and senior staff most of them were expats from overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So I very much felt like a minority in the workplace there, and struggled a bit with whether there was career progression and whether there was a future being from a different race to the majority of the people that were running the business.
Yep.
And the other firms as well. So that was a bit of a struggle at the start, but then I moved around a little bit, because I thought it was very important not to just be a consulting QS for my whole life. I thought it was really important to go and test the career from different points of view to really understand how a builder thinks, how a developer thinks as a client, and then the consulting QS. So I've sort of covered what I believe are all 3 facets of the QS role, and I think it made me a much more rounded QS to understand the complexities from all 3 sides.
Yeah. That's something that, there's a lot of quantity surveyors that would listen to this and sort of would love to get into that builder side. Like, was there anything that you had to do or had to learn to sort of get yourself into the way of thinking, or just essentially to get comfortable working for a builder?
Yeah, it was a totally different type of work than I was used to. It wasn't my cup of tea. I've got mates that I went to uni with that absolutely love being an estimator for a builder and would not do anything else.
Yeah.
But I personally, I love being involved in a project from the start. When you're talking to a client, you've got no drawings, it's just a concept or an idea, or whether it's a hospital where they say we want to build a 200-bed ward, and you start working up concepts at that point, and it might only be areas, and then converting that to a cost budget to start with, and then starting to develop the functional brief. And
Right, guys, so I'm absolutely pumped to say the Takeoff podcast is proud to be sponsored by RIB Software, the company behind some of the leading estimating software in the entire planet, including Costex, Candy, CX, and more. So firstly, if you didn't know, RIB are a powerhouse at providing innovative software solutions to the construction and engineering markets. They have over 500,000 users globally, are known universally as a solution provider for your entire project lifecycle, from planning to construction and beyond. RIB solutions help to ultimately connect people, processes, and data, so your project comes within budget, on time, and to the quality desired, all whilst reducing your business's carbon footprint. All this stuff matters, and RIB has the solutions. So if you're interested in finding out more, get on over to rib-software.com, reach out to your local team and quote Takeoff Podcast. For every listener who buys a subscription of RIB CostX, they will provide one free online training course. Okay, guys, back to the episode.
Design development all the way through to construction and then final account. I really love seeing that process out, where some people think it's absolutely terrible being involved in the project for 5 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, the mates that I've got that are building estimators, they love the fact that it's like, I'm on this for 4 weeks and then I'm off it and on to the next job.
Yeah.
It's very intense working for a builder, but you need to be suited to that type of environment and yeah, prefer that I'm on this job now and I'm going to be on the next job next week or the week after. And may never, ever hear again about that job that we may have won and may have made money on it, or you might have put something out and we've lost a bucket load of money on it.
That's true. Actually, I never thought of that. You know, it can be quite transactional, I suppose, in many ways, if you're not winning projects. And it's interesting.
I think some builders have got a lot better procedures in place in keeping the estimator on board throughout the sort of tender negotiation and delivery phase, so they're aware of how it actually ended up as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important, but if they want to come along on that journey, so you understand everything's a learning curve. I would never say I know everything, and every day I'm learning something new.
Yeah. Always a student, which is one of my philosophies in life as well. So obviously you had worked in the PQS side of things, started working for a builder. At one point, you ended up becoming the CEO of the AIQS. What was that like to be in such a prestigious role within the industry?
When I started uni back in '94, I joined the AIQS immediately. I just thought we had someone come and talk to us at uni about it, and I just felt it was the right thing to do. Back then, it was paid membership, so it was earning $13,000 a year that I was on, I think. Yeah. And then have to fork out $90 a year, I think it was, for membership. It was a bit hefty, but I just felt like, look, this is the profession I'm going into, so I'm all in or I'm not in.
Yep.
And to me, that included getting involved in the profession and trying to grow the profession. After probably even after 6 months, I could see what a fantastic and important career it was, and how there wasn't really, I don't feel like it's got the respect in Australia that it probably does in places like the UK.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to help grow that and wanted to grow the understanding, because again, like I didn't know what the career was until I actually started the course. And it's like, why didn't I know about this? This is something that's so important that more people should know about it. So joined the AIQS. I joined the New South Wales chapter, and I got brought in on numerous 5-year strategic plans for them as a sounding board as a young quantity surveyor, along with some of the other guys around the country and girls. Mm-hmm. And I started to build up this young QS network in New South Wales, which ended up growing into quite a good following around the country.
Great.
Once I graduated, then I moved on to the state chapter as a graduate, and got more involved at the state level and organised events and did the APC interviews and all that sort of stuff for them. I became the state president in New South Wales. Then it was time to step up to the national level, so I got onto the national board and started working across both the Pacific region and internationally with the AIQS. Mm-hmm. Then quite a few things happened around that sort of time when the opportunity arose with the AIQS. Mm-hmm. So my wife, who's now passed away, she got diagnosed with breast cancer towards the end of being pregnant with our first daughter. And we went through quite a tumultuous time with that. She went through treatment and all that sort of stuff. New baby was born. We got to the end of that. I was working at Davis Langdon. They'd been acquired by AECOM just to add some more complexity to our lives.
Yeah. And
then this opportunity arose with the AIQS, where they were looking for a new CEO. And I thought, look, this is I've loved this profession so much. I've dedicated my whole sort of, it would have been 20 odd years to the profession. There was some things that I really wanted to get changed over the 20 odd years I'd been involved, but I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to sort of get in there and make those changes. So threw my hat in the ring, and I was lucky enough to get appointed to the CEO role.
That's awesome. I think it's being in these associations, sometimes, there's associations that kind of just sit at the side and they're not involved. But I think there's a real purpose with the AIQS, because as you said, it has predominantly been a kind of like a UK focused industry as a whole. I worked in New Zealand as well, and it's very similar in New Zealand too. What was your sort of mandate when you went into that CEO role? Was it to make the QS role more attractive, or to get out there and bring more sort of Aboriginal people to understand what a QS is, or what was that sort of mandate for you?
One thing was to freshen up the institute. So we gave it a new look. We updated the Building Economist magazine. We created a new logo. We streamlined the entry routes. So there was something like 30 different entry category grades before.
Yep.
We chopped that down and consolidated it. We looked at how to engage both with the profession internally and externally.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the rebranding and refreshing was all about both external and internal. We created a national awards program, which was the Infinite Value Awards, which was an amazing program that ran for 3 years until I left, and then it all sort of fizzled away.
Mm-hmm.
But the industry loved that. Like, they love the fact that we had our own awards program that we could nominate our projects for, and the QSs who worked on that could get some glory for what they'd done. It wasn't just about the architects and the engineers and all that sort of stuff. So it's a real shame that didn't continue.
Mm.
Then I also set up the online training platform, which is the AIQS Academy. And that was really targeted at two things. One was to provide CPD opportunities, having no idea what COVID was coming.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing opportunity over the last year for AIQS members to maintain their CPD without leaving their bedroom.
Yeah.
And also it gave us the opportunity to allow entry to people that have graduated from different degrees around the world to upskill themselves with our core competencies that we'd created. And we knew that if they'd done that, then they were on the right path to the profession in quantity surveying.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, because having worked in the UK and New Zealand and Ireland, when I moved to Australia and started recruiting for quantity surveyors, a lot of the time the companies that would indicate to me that they only wanted to hire people who were members of the AIQS.
Yep.
Which was great, because it kind of like made my job a little bit easier in terms of, are you a member or are you not? It's not subjective in that case. Was there any challenges that you faced during that time as the CEO? Like, I guess that there always is.
Yeah, probably the biggest challenge was the fact that the AIQS had become, not by trying, but just by pure chance, it had become such an international institute.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know the RICS has over 100,000 members, but they span over so many different professions. But as a pure quantity surveying institute, when I was there, and I don't think the numbers are too different now, we had about 4,000 members, and almost 33% of those were outside of Australia.
Yeah, that's incredible.
The number was growing a lot quicker than the local numbers were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was purely because there's so many more, the demand for QS services overseas was growing. There was a lot of courses internationally that were still pure quantity surveying courses, where in Australia, most of them have been amalgamated into construction and property management courses. So there's not that sort of real QS course like I did when I was at university. So therefore people are coming out and then going into quite different roles instead of pure quantity surveying work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just, what I was leading to is the battle that we had between, are we an Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, or that just happens to have international members, or are we now an international organisation that's based in Australia?
Yeah, well, that's true. Like I see a lot of South African QSs who are based in South Africa and are members of the AIQS.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, even like throughout the Pacific region, there was a body called the Pacific Association of Quantity Surveyors,
mm-hmm.
and the AIQS established that organisation years ago with alongside some of the Asian counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really, before I took over, they'd sort of dropped off a bit from that association,
Yeah,
and it was really felt across the Asian Pacific region. So when I came on board, everyone was just so happy to see the AIQS more involved in regional work. And then we tried to get up some programs where we were doing sort of cost benchmarking across the whole Asia Pacific region and trying to get some research and study done across all those regions to really help the profession both here and there.
mm-hmm. What do you see the future of quantity surveying looking like? Do you think that it's going to evolve, the role will evolve, technology will change it at all?
Yeah, I think when I started back in '94, I remember a guy called Malcolm January, who was quite heavily involved in the RQS back in those days, and I think he authored quite a few publications. He may have been a lecturer at university too. Told me in '94 that in 10 years that a QS wouldn't be needed because all the quantities would be automated out of, well, it wasn't even 3D models back then, I don't think. I think it was 2D.
2D, yeah.
And yeah, our role would almost be redundant. So that's, what's that? It's like nearly 30 years now down the road. Still hasn't happened. I think the role has evolved a lot, but I think the smarts that have come into the role have allowed a QS to be more effective in the good parts of what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
So measuring a brick wall or counting toilets isn't really the most glorious thing to do, and it's not the smartest thing to do, but actually choosing which type you should be using and having the ability to not waste as much time in quantifying them gives you more time to look at alternatives and different ways of thinking and different ways of delivering projects.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a QS's role is going.
Mm-hmm.
I just fear that the whole market seems to be constantly battling still, and I even see it in the construction sector where we're all battling for fees and margin, and driving down margin just drives down quality, which is not a great thing. And it's nice when clients will take a risk and bring you on board on a single select basis with more of an open book situation where they're more trying to get the right outcome than just get the cheapest price and get a really poor outcome.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it's going to be even more interesting over the next couple of years to see how things pan out with the talent shortage that there currently is, with the borders have been locked down for such a long time now as well. Like if costs keep going down, it's going to get harder and harder. I don't know where things are going to go in that respect. But what I'm also quite keen to talk about, Michael, is obviously you've been the CEO of the AIQS, you've been in director roles for PQS firms, you've worked in contractors. How have you went around sort of building a high performing team and building a culture?
I think one of my strengths is getting on with people, and I think I can really find. I'm one of those people that really would like to find the good points in people instead of focusing on the bad points, and try and find out what someone's suited to and give them more encouragement to shine in that role.
Yep.
So I think that's really important, to really understand your workforce and really understand differences. Some of those survey type things that we use, I think can be really great in understanding somebody's, whether they're like a coach or whether they're an introvert, an extrovert, and then understanding what makes them comfortable, what doesn't make them comfortable. The whole working from home thing that's happened through COVID, it's obviously worked really well for some people, where we've found other people really need to get nudged to come back in the office because they seem to perform a lot better like that.
Yeah.
Even like myself, I was back in the office from April last year, and most days it was only me and one other person in the office, but I just felt like I was performing better in that situation.
I always feel guilty at home. I don't know why, but I always feel like this doesn't feel quite right, even if it's just being in an office by myself and there's a coffee machine outside, it just feels like I'm more at work. I don't know why that is.
I tend to eat too much if I stay at home too. So it's
I
too
know.
handy.
Yeah, I can only stay at home on a Friday when there's all the groceries have been eaten.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm interrupting this podcast today to give you some information as to what I actually do every single day. So I own and operate a business called Get In Executive Recruitment. We're a specialist boutique recruitment company, and we specialize purely in the pre-construction and commercial construction markets globally. We're really well known, respected for our work in estimating, cost management, quantity surveying, and contract administration. Because we're hyper niche, we don't have millions of candidates. We don't really even have thousands, but more times than not, we have the right candidate for the right job at the right time. Unlike a lot of recruitment agents out there, we are super experienced in what we do. We understand the market, we understand what makes our clients tick, and our candidates tick too. Each and every single assignment we work on undergoes an extensive executive search process. It's robust and it works 100% of the time. We've also got a team of 5 researchers who map our markets out globally within our niche. They're amazing. They allow us to work fast, which saves our clients time and money too. So if you're interested in our process, drop us a message. Now back to the episode. No, that's really good, and I think really understanding your people is super important. And I always say to companies, like, you can reduce your recruitment fees by looking after what you have,
Yeah.
and it's honestly, finding someone new to hire is something like 7 times greater than what it is to try and retain the people that you have,
Yep.
and it's so hard to find great people, both in terms of like character as well as the technical skill that they have.
And it's not always about just the money either. Like sometimes it is, but sometimes people just want the recognition, want the title more than the money sometimes too.
It's the world is, in terms of employment, is constantly evolving. I'm also quite keen to talk about your current position at the moment. What is your current role, and what are you currently responsible for?
So I'm the general manager of a building company called DLG Shape.
Mm-hmm.
That's a partnership between a guy called David Lydiard and the Shape Group, Shape Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So Shape have been around for 30 odd years. This partnership between David and Shape has been going for about 4 years now. I've been the general manager for the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
David's an ex-rugby league player who played for Parramatta, Manly and Penrith, and also played for Hull, I think, and Oldham over in the UK.
Oh, really? So he's been international?
Yeah. He's an Aboriginal fella. He's from the same, one of his tribes that he's from is the same as one of Mum's, which is Biripi.
Oh, yeah.
We actually found out they're related through marriage. So his cousin is the CEO of the Purfleet Land Council, and she's married to my cousin.
Oh, it's a small world.
It's not uncommon.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I run this building company. It's majority Aboriginal owned. So a lot of the work that we do generally is around where we engage with Aboriginal communities and do work with them. So one thing that we're doing at the moment up in Darwin is we're doing work with one of the land councils up here. We're doing an office fit out for them. So it's a very traditional type of project.
Mm-hmm.
But then we've been out on Groot Island, which is off East Arnhem land, and basically trying to give back as part of that role. So we're not just taking a job, taking the profit and walking away from it. We were actually on the island meeting with the school kids in the schools and trying to mentor them, understand what the importance is of education, the success that David's had through his sporting career and what opportunities that's opened up for them as well. Stay off the drugs and the booze and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So it's not just a building contractor. There's a real sort of social purpose behind the business as well then?
Absolutely. David is, as a person, he has spent his entire career trying to help Aboriginal communities. When he finished his football career, he set up a body called the National Aboriginal Sporting Chance Academy, which is a not-for-profit that's touched on the lives of 80,000 Aboriginal youth around the country. And that has really been starting off with just like trying to encourage them into sporting programs to say, hey, stay at school, do some sport, set up programs for kids to get into netball. And they had a program called Finding Australia's Tiger, which is about finding Australia's next Tiger Woods.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Original child. So he's done all programs like that, but then it's sort of moved into mentoring, and it's a whole lot bigger than just a sporting program now. So what we do as a business in some way allows David to continue on that great work that he does, but then we come along on that journey as well. And also SHAPE does as our partner. So I manage SHAPE's Reconciliation Action Plan for them, and they've done some amazing work in that space. Like their spend with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses to date is over $16 million. So
that's amazing.
They've had a really big impact into that sector.
Yeah, it's great to see some like tangible outcomes as well, because sometimes you see at the bottom of a job advertisement, we welcome applicants, but the reality of it is like how many sort of Aboriginal people are going to be reading all the different job specifications, and sometimes it might be just a box to tick for some contractors, but it's great to see you're out there engaging with the community, and it's not just a box to tick, I guess. What is your real vision with this, Michael?
I really want to lift that number from 255. There should be more than 2 quantity surveyors in the country. There should be more than 20 registered architects that are Aboriginal in this country. The numbers have got to grow. There's a growing importance on culture and cultural identity. I was just talking with the CEO of the Green Building Council the other day, and I'd given them some advice about an Indigenous design charter that had been created, and they've now incorporated that in the new version of Green Star. So it's pretty amazing that a tool like Green Star is now incorporating cultural design practices of Indigenous people into a modern day rating tool, which will hopefully then have a flow-on effect of lifting the need for that knowledge, which will then create jobs and opportunities for these people to share as well.
So when you say 255, is that in construction in its entirety, or is that like white collar, or what is that number?
The 255 is the number of students at university. Architecture and property. The actual number of white collar workers, look, I'm slowly picking away trying to find them, but it's really slim pickings. Like I know of 2 guys up in Brisbane that are project managers. I know an engineer in Sydney. I know an architect in Sydney, 1 architect and 1 interior designer.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's such low numbers, isn't it? Like I didn't realize it was so low. To be honest, I'm completely obnoxious to that.
Yeah, it's extra. I didn't realize how low it was until I really started delving into the research and trying to find the numbers.
How do you think we change that? How do you think we inspire more Aboriginal people to move into the construction and property industry?
Yeah, so I think it's part of the work that David and I are doing and going to these schools and communities and trying to talk to them, because there is a growing number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people going into university studies. And there's been some fantastic programs set up, like there's AFL Sports Ready, which is a program that isn't just about AFL, it is about training and education.
Yeah.
They've got a specialist sort of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander arm to what they do. There's Career Trackers, which has been very successful in placing in people in internship programs. And that's, if they see opportunities and they see, well, okay, if I go to the effort of going to university, there's something like Career Trackers that will help me get an internship that will then help me get a job in the future.
Yeah.
The difficult part with Career Trackers is where a lot of these students are located is not necessarily matched with where the jobs are. So then they've got to move away from home to do that, and that doesn't always work so well.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's been a lot of students going into legal professions and health, and I think there's this mentality that there's obviously a focus around land rights and all those sort of legal issues with the number of Aboriginal people in incarceration and arrests and black deaths in custody and all that sort of stuff. So the legal space is a very powerful space where they think that, okay, if I get a law degree, I can help my mob in that sort of field.
Yeah.
And then health space is another one, and sports health, where sports has always been such a big focus. There's so many amazing role models with sporting careers like Ash Barty, Kathy Freeman, Latrell Mitchell, Greg Inglis, like the list goes on and on. So they see that sort of sports health and everything related to something that they have a passion about.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find ways, and I've been engaging with a lot of the universities, which I've got connections with from my time at the AOQS, to find a way that we really got to get into the schools and educate the kids at school about how great the construction industry is.
Yeah.
You need a house to live in, so who do you think builds that house for you? Like, you can really make an impact on your local community and the environment by going into that field.
Yeah, 100%. I interviewed last year Tara Barnes, and she has a Aboriginal heritage, and she works in ARTC here in Brisbane. But like for me, there was some. I remember I'd done the podcast a little while ago, and can't remember exactly who it was, but they said you can't be what you don't see, and like that always sort of resonated with me so much, you know. And I wonder, coming from an Irish background, it's storytelling has always been super important. You know, I remember being super young and sitting there with my uncles and brothers and my family and just hearing stories. And you always want, you know what, I'd love to do that when I grow up. So I think doing, you know, the podcast and things like this, and, you know, sharing the stories of other successful Aboriginal people who work in construction, I think that's super important. And I'd be quite keen to talk to you after this, Michael, to see if there's anyone else that you would recommend that I speak to, because the more that people see, the more that people want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do in making these connections with the architects and all the different professions where I can find some Aboriginal people, is to try and set up a group where we can find those role models that we can promote to the students. Mm-hmm. And hopefully bodies like the AOQS, all the other institutes, the engineers, the architects and all that come together and help support some sort of program to make that happen.
Yeah, totally.
I'm Deputy Chair of the New South Wales Committee for Diversity and Inclusion with the Property Council. Mm-hmm. And the Property Council is making some great headway in that space as well.
Yeah.
And obviously got the backing of a lot of the big corporates in the property sector behind them.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, this is like a bit of like a selfish question, but sometimes I feel a little bit awkward in like trying to promote not Indigenous people, but, you know, sometimes I feel like, well, I'm from Ireland, you know, would people look at me and say, what's this weirdo doing, you know? But my mum, she passed away when I was 22, but she was a really socially conscious person. There's the traveller community in Ireland. She worked specifically with them, and the traveller community were looked upon as like thieves. And, you know, if you use the word gypsy in my house, she used to she'd hit you around the head. And yep. I would tell people that my mom was like, she'd work with the traveller community, and people would like make fun of me and stuff like that. There's always been a socially conscious part of me that's always there. But I always think, you know, if someone thinks I'm trying to promote Indigenous people, are they just going to think that, like, who is this guy? You know, what do you think about that?
There's some really amazing people in this country, mm-hmm. That are doing some fantastic stuff in that space. My daughter's school, they do some amazing programs. I think my daughters are probably the only Aboriginal kids at this whole school.
Yeah.
But then they do some amazing work in that space, and they've got some really passionate teachers and parents that of Aboriginal heritage, and I really admire them for the effort they put, especially if it's genuine. By the way, my great-grandfather's from County Mayo, so...
You're truly an international man.
My family's, the mum's one of 16, so...
Jeez.
On mum's side, we've got Italian, Lebanese, Thai, Greek. We've got all sorts in there. My late wife was Croatian. My current wife's Filipino.
Yeah.
I've got that bit of Irish in me, and then the Aboriginal and the Greek. It's like a multicultural place, our family.
Yeah, 16 in a family, like there'd never be a cold toilet seat anyway, you know.
No.
Yeah.
No one picked on him either, because three of Mum's brothers were champion boxers. One was a New South Wales amateur boxing champ.
Good. Love that. Yeah, that's awesome. If you're given, you know, if it's an Indigenous person out there, or even just someone in the industry, would you have any advice for them on certainly at the very early stages of their career? What advice would you give them, if they're looking to break into quantity surveying or construction?
Yeah, like my advice that I think I really flourish from is not sticking to one. I had directors quite often say, look, you've got to specialise in a sector. I'm like, I don't want to specialise in a sector, because I had directors that have been retail specialists. The next thing, the whole retail market collapses, or resi specialists, and then that collapses.
Yep.
So I've always liked to know enough about, I've worked in residential, healthcare, medical research, basically commercial industrial buildings, fit outs, like every building possible, I reckon I've worked on.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wish I did have a bit of exposure to was infrastructure. I didn't really have a lot of exposure on the infrastructure space.
Yeah.
And then getting a broad understanding of, like I had with the different aspects of the profession, in whether you work for a builder, a developer, a property owner, or a designer. I just think you just need to be a sponge and just soak up as much as you possibly can, and just get an understanding from all the different professions' point of view and all the different sectors. And then if you decide to specialise, then you can do that later on. But I think when you're younger, you should really try and get an understanding of as much different types of facets of the industry that you can.
No, I agree with that as well. It's quite risky if you've got 25, 30 years experience and it's one specific sector. And COVID's shown us that. Just to finish off then, with a few sort of quick fire questions. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley, really? That's definitely a new one. Are you a bit of a fan? Are you?
Yeah, my nan used to call me that, and my current boss has nicknamed me Elvis because he saw a photo of me when I was younger, and he's a mad Elvis fan. So.
I hope you didn't have the sideburns.
No.
Good.
I've got the weight now. That's the only down part. I'm like in the 70s now.
If there's one thing in construction that you could change, what would it be? I know that we've talked about this quite heavily during the conversation.
Oh, just for everyone to be fair, like it's such a cutthroat industry in some ways. And I've always had the approach as a quantity surveyor that when I've been valuing progress claims, if a builder wants to take the mickey out of us and double what they should be claiming each month, then I'm going to go hard on them too. Yep. But if they want to play fair, I'll play fair. And I think it's not just the industry, like the world would be such a nicer place if everyone was just nice and amicable to each other and not try and take the mickey out of everyone. Like, just be fair. Everyone makes a few dollars and no one's ripping anyone off, and we get everything done and everyone's happy.
Yeah, well said. Well said. What one book or film has inspired you the most or changed your thinking?
I don't know. Jeez. A lot of the stuff I've been watching lately has been a lot of stuff focused on the new, like there was a movie, High Ground, that I watched, which was movie with Jack Thompson in it. It's about sort of dispossession of land from Aboriginal people.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that's really changed my attitude towards the fact that history in Australia has never been told the way it actually is.
Yep.
Starting to come out now. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is something that I find was a very useful document. And the thing that is the most important part of that to me is truth-telling. And I think truth-telling goes along to what I was saying before about being fair, It's like, let's just be all open and honest and tell the truth. Let's not hide the history from each other, and let's tell the truth going forward. So films like that have a really sort of important message to tell, not just about our history in Australia, but I think about how people should approach the future.
Yep, absolutely. You've got to keep one eye on the past and two eyes on the future.
Yeah.
Final question. What one thing that you're looking forward to in construction?
Making an impact and leaving with a legacy.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not here to be famous, but I'd love to be known that that's the guy who made a difference to the QS profession in a good way, and also made an impact on these people, whether it be our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, or like I respect my Greek heritage, my wife's Filipino, like I said. Every country's got their issues, and if I can help some of them in some way, I feel like I've left the industry and this place a better person.
Love that. Well, I think that's a perfect way to round up the podcast. If there's anyone out there, starting off their career and wants to make contact, is the best way to maybe reach you via LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. I went and spoke at UTS a couple of years ago. They bring in kids from different schools and show them about uni. And there's a young fella that kept my card from 2 or 3 years ago, and I changed roles. I was actually, must have been 3 or 4 years ago. So he'd reached out to LinkedIn, and I'm helping him out now. So I'm always here to help anyone on their journey. I'm got a big amount of connection on LinkedIn, so I'm not one of those precious people that only connects with people that they know very well. But yeah, reach out to that, or look me up on dlgshape.com.au and connect through there.
Well, it's been an absolute honour, Michael. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Mick.
Thank you so much for listening to Measured with me, Mick Donoghue. Our goal with this podcast is to create a community of construction professionals from a variety of backgrounds and experiences to develop, learn, and grow together. As a business, our aim with Franklin Smith is to become the most respected pre-construction and quantity surveying recruitment agency in Australia within the next 5 years. Thereafter, our goal is to build a 100-year company that outlives us as owners, but lives on in the careers and legacy projects we recruit for. Listening to this podcast is being a small part of that journey, and we're forever thankful for your time. If you'd like to connect further with our ever-growing community, check out the Measured Facebook and LinkedIn pages. Thanks for listening to Measured. Catch you next time. Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.